Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 1 of Mystique from the Ashes, written by Declan Shalvey. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. Now this issue opens with a breakdown of currency and how it changed over time, and on the first page, the narrator states that information is the currency in which she trades in. Because all throughout history, people used coins, animals, pelts, land, and even humans to act in place of that function. But today, it is the knowledge that gives power. Now, despite data and info replacing the gold dust in the 21st century, the methods in which they receive it stayed the same, because just like in the past, it was up to the pioneers to gather it. And on the next page, we see Maverick and a strike team making their way through a factory as they track a dangerous target. And as they moved, a squad mate told Maverick to stay on his guard because their target is extremely dangerous. Now this was something Maverick knew firsthand, more than most, due to his days in Weapon X. In fact, Maverick went as far as to state that his knowledge of the target was one of the reasons they hired him. He then went on to share how Creed is a remorseless killer, and he has no idea how he found himself in Germany all the way from Krakoa. But that was none of his concern because their good friends in S.H.I.E.L.D. hired them to hunt him down. Now, despite S.H.I.E.L.D. hiring them to hunt him down, Maverick points out how Creed is an animal that is best put down. So with that said, Maverick then went on to say, he is taking no chances with this operation, and gives the order to shoot on sight. So as the squad made their way forward, a small noise caught Maverick's attention, and just to prove his point, he opened up in that direction, only to just hit the wall. So with that miss, one of his fellow soldiers stated that was their element of surprise. To which Maverick responded by saying, those shots didn't warn him, for Creed heard them as soon as their boots touched the ground outside. As they continue to move, the soldiers point out how jumpy he is and how he wasn't acting like himself, to the point where they raised their weapon at him and ordered him to put his hands in the air. Because at this point in the mission, they were convinced that this wasn't their team leader, because Maverick should have a healing factor, and from what they could see, the cut on his arm was taking too long to heal. Now with little options before him, Maverick turned over his weapon and allowed himself to be placed in handcuffs. But unfortunately for him, once he was cuffed, one of the quieter squad members opened fire on the others. And once they were dealt with, the turncoat revealed itself to be Mystique. Following that, as Maverick sat defenseless, he quickly asked Mystique to cut him loose because they needed to move. So with that said, Mystique just laughed it off and informed Maverick that if he is worried about Creed, then he could calm down, for Mystique used Creed's appearance to lure him out of hiding, because she compared Creed to being Maverick's white whale. But see, Mystique was partially right about her statement, because Maverick went on to say that this job is significantly more dangerous since he lost his healing factor, which was a fact he was trying to keep secret, which has just backfired on him. Because with his squad eliminated, it was only a matter of time until the backup team showed up and cleaned up the mess left behind. So with the new opponents on the scene, Mystique quickly tossed Maverick at them as a distraction and laid down a fury of bullets into them. So with them down, another one snuck up behind her and was about to shoot, but once again Mystique was a few moves ahead of them and took him out as well. So, with that said, Maverick, recovering from his toss, shouted for the rest of the team to fire on Mystique because, in his words, she was even worse than Creed. At least with Creed, one will know who they are dealing with. Following that statement, Mystique took it upon herself to take the form of Maverick just to add a little more confusion to the mix, and to her credit, it did just that, because right when Maverick had her in his sights, an unexpected soldier came in the room and shot Maverick in his arm, just to be finished off by Mystique in kind. So with the deed done, on the last panel on this page, we see Mystique still standing as the sole victor. Now with that battle done and over, we then jump over to Virginia, the headquarters of the CIA, and when we get there, we see Fury Jr. answering a phone call. And on said call, someone is asking him about some files related to Krakoa, the same files he hasn't received as of yet. Now with frustration building up, the next scene we see him sitting on a park bench as Nick Fury Sr. walks up behind him, and the first thing he said was how the mighty have fallen. Because as of right now Nick Fury Jr. is working a low-level desk job cataloging where mutants went following the fall of Krakoa. So with Jr. in a position that is leading nowhere, Nick Fury Sr. offers his son some information that could help out his career. Now officially Jr. isn't allowed to hear him, but off the record, he was listening. Now before Sr. could give the info, he asked his son to act on whatever he disclosed to him, because from Sr.'s perspective, Jr. just like himself, was a former ranger with God knows how many medals pinned to his chest, but for some reason, the higher-ups are keeping him behind a desk. So with that out there, Junior stood to his feet and was moments away from walking away, because according to him, he wasn't his father, he wasn't the man who knew every dirty secret of the last 8 years. He wasn't the person who goes and guns a-blazing into a situation without considering the consequences. Because if it was up to him, he wasn't there to live out his father's legacy. So because of that, he tells his father he could give him the intel if he wants, but he will be the one to choose what he would do with it. Now that was the exact thing Nick Fury Sr. wanted to hear, because Sr. handed over a flash drive and told him the password was Darkholme. Because according to Sr., he knew that his son was nothing like him, but he also understood his son was still a Fury, and as a Fury, he trusted that his son would make the right call. Now with this drive in Junior's possession, he went back to his office and went through the data provided by his father, and once he opened it, he learned that the drive was full of data about Mystique, and the more he looked into it, the more he uncovered additional intel. So with all of that building up, Junior couldn't help but to ask why no one was keeping an eye on her. So with Junior's gears starting to spin, we then jump back over to Maverick's story arc, and when we get there, Maverick wakes up to see a new soldier telling him to stay still and wait for their medics to show up and patch him up. So with that out there, Maverick then went on to ask about Mystique's whereabouts, to which the soldier stated that they tried to stop her, but she was too much to deal with and managed to escape, but not before taking everyone out. But then he went on to also say that before Mystique escaped, she asked about a device by the name of Protozoa. Now right when the soldier brought up that name, Maverick immediately knew that the person before him wasn't a soldier at all, but instead Raven herself, trying to get information out of him. So with Mystique's attempt to get information running up short, she then started to walk around while shifting from identity to identity. Until eventually she landed on a person that was extremely close to him, until she landed on his brother's face. Now this right here hit close to home for Maverick, because years ago, Maverick was responsible for shooting his brother right in the face, killing him on the spot. So with this cheap trick deployed, Raven then went on to tell Maverick, if he tells her what she wants to know, then she would show him what his brother would have looked like if he lived, but if he doesn't, then she would show him his brother's corpses the day he died. Now following this threat, Maverick, in a fit of rage, broke his cuffs and rushed Raven, just to be stopped dead in his tracks, with a single hit to his bullet wound. So as the pain flowed through his body, all Maverick could do was ask how Raven knew about his brother. Now to this, Raven just simply responded by saying spies love to gossip, and besides, all spies have some form of dirt hidden somewhere. And if Raven was being honest, that was one of the reasons why she chose him anyway to be her way to find Protozoa. And the crazy part is, he doesn't even know it yet, so by the time his bosses find him, they'll be too late. So in the meantime, Raven stated that she needs only one thing from him for the time being, and that is everything he knows about S.H.I.E.L.D. So speaking of S.H.I.E.L.D., the next scene we jump over to is Nick Fury still following Raven's paper trail. And while he searched, he stated that Raven was one of the big wigs during Krakoa and a member on their council. But when everything fell apart, she disappeared in the wind. In fact, she vanished so cleanly that no one is even keeping an eye on her, which of course isn't a good idea to have a player like that potentially back on the board. So with this much on the line, Nick then went on to say he will have to turn over a lot of stones carefully to uncover the truth, because from what he could see, Raven is not one to take lightly. So because of that, Fury stated that he will need to bring in the help of Maria if he wants any hope of solving this development. Now right when he thought that, a delivery man stopped by his office and stated that something had been flagged to be sent to him. Now oddly enough, the files that were sent to him were about the event that just took place in Germany, where Raven just took out Maverick's Black Ops team. Now with that out there, we then transition over to Fury meeting with his old friend, the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill. And during their conversation, Nick brings up how he wanted additional resources to track down a high-level mutant that disappeared, but before he could say his target's name, Maria cuts him off and tells him that he knows her hands are tied, so she could only work with the resources that is given to her, for S.H.I.E.L.D. is a different beast in this current age. Because, unlike in the past, S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer has a budget to throw a helicarrier at all their problems. So because of that, Fury has to track down Raven within the resources allotted to him. Now with that half victory under Fury's belt, we then transition over to a yacht outside of Annapolis, with an extremely rich female talking with her accountant. And apparently, the rich female is quote-unquote getting a request for more financial backing from her cousin, who is leading an anti-mutant hate group. And due to a little bit of blackmail, the female feels obligated to continue to fund his organization. So once she agreed to send the money, out of nowhere the accountant proceeded to take off and jump off the yacht and into the water as the ship rammed itself into the dock, causing massive amounts of damages. And to no one's surprise, the person who was behind this whole scheme was Raven, and by the looks of it, it was a mission success. So as the fire touched the sky and the mayhem continued to unfold, Raven just simply exited the water and took the form of the once rich female and proceeded to enter the car waiting for her. And once in, she requested the driver to take her to Washington, D.C. So following that, we fast forward to the nation's capital just as Nick Fury arrived at home, and by the sounds of it, he was not happy with his meeting with Maria, because the resources he had was nowhere big enough to deal with a person like Raven. And speaking of Raven, from across the street, Raven sat and watched as Nick Fury started to open his door, and once he turned his key, his home went up in flames. Now this right here was something Fury did not see coming, but just because he didn't see it coming, didn't mean he wasn't prepared for it. For out of the fiery inferno emerged Nick Fury clad in his issued SHIELD tactical armor. Now this right here pissed him off so bad that within 36 hours, Nick was able to assemble a strike team and travel all the way to Colorado to return the favor. And the way Nick was able to find said address was by doing a little digging. Now the only problem with digging is, once you start to dig it is hard not to get covered in the dirt because not all dirt washes off. And at that moment, one of the trigger finger happy soldiers shouted that she was reaching and opened fire against Nick's command, and shot the woman at the desk several times in the back, and by the look of the final panel, the person who was shot was none other than Destiny, Raven's wife. So with that said, this first issue of Mystique comes to an end. But anyway, down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.